This is an exclusive excerpt from the Stuph File Program with Peter Anthony Holder.
Actor Dean Butler is best known for his role as Almanzo Wilder on the hit TV series Little House on the Prairie. By the way, that show went on the air 50 years ago. In celebrating that milestone, Dean has also shared his story in the book Prairie Man, My Little House, Life, and Beyond. Dean joins us via Zoom from California. Hi, Dean.
Hey, Peter. Good morning.
Thanks for being on the program with us. I'm just tickety-boo. Thanks for being on the program with us. Your book, as I said, is called Prairie Man, My Little House, Life, and Beyond. And, of course, you're playing Almanzo, who was a real person. Did you have an opportunity when you first got the role to meet any of the relatives of Almanzo Wilder? Because, of course, he was no longer around at that time.
Yeah. No, I did not. And Peter, I had not read the books growing up. I was, I knew about the series, but wasn't following it closely. So but I had a sense of what it was. Since those years, more so post-series than during the series, I've had the opportunity to meet lots of people who have relationships or would seem to be connected to all of these actual people. And it's been, it's been interesting and revealing and so on. I think most of what I've gotten from people is that they are so grateful for the fact that the series existed in order to bring a greater awareness of their relations and their families, their lives, what they did. It's been a really nice thing.
Now, you also, and I'm going to jump forward a little bit because you've also worked as a producer and a director. And the reason why I bring that up is you've gone to the other side of the camera and you do that very well. But when you first worked on Little House, you were working with, quite frankly, a master who had gone from in front of the camera to behind the camera and continued being in front of the camera, and that is Michael Landon. What did you learn from him that has kept you instead in your career throughout?
Michael had an incredible sense of certainty about what he was doing. One of the things that you learn as a producer, or that you have to learn as a producer, is that you have to be willing to make decisions. You may not always make the right decision, but you have to be willing to make a decision to move forward. And then if you've made the wrong decision, you have to be able to pivot on that. Where Michael was concerned, I just saw one amazing decision after another as to how he did what he was doing, the people he put around him to do the work, his commitment to storytelling. Michael understood what he was trying to accomplish better than anybody else around him. And it's not that he had incredible people around him, but his vision was so clear about what he was trying to do, and he was able to communicate that to everybody he was working with in a way that got everybody on the same page, moving in one direction to get things done. I always say about Michael, he did not negotiate with people about performances or about a style and approach to the work. He wanted it his way. He was crystal clear about it. And because he was so crystal clear about it, Peter, everybody who worked with Michael went along because he had convinced them beyond the shadow of a doubt that he was crystal clear about what he was trying to do.
How did you get the role of Almanzo?
It was one of those, Peter, it was one of those things that was one of many auditions that you go on as a young actor. I've come to believe through the years that actors get the parts they're supposed to get. Casting directors and producers just have to wait long enough for the right person to walk in the door. And they will eventually, depending on how wide they cast their net to find the right people for them. I feel so fortunate that I walked in the door when I walked in the door with an invitation from Susan Sukman, who was our casting director, through my wonderful agent at ICM, a woman named Ina Bernstein. And I went in the door, and as is so often the case, really the case most all the time, Peter, decisions get made about casting in about 8 seconds. When you walk in the door, someone knows two things. They know if you could be right, and they know that you're probably wrong. If you could be right, then there's you have a leg up in that situation. For me, it was about 4 different meetings, the last one culminating in a conversation and reading for Michael Landon, and he basically told me in the room that he'd hired me. I had to wait another 2 weeks to actually get the offer, which was excruciating. But he basically told me in the room that I had it, and it has been the great gift of my life, Peter, to be a part of this show.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. You weren't originally cast in that show, correct? When it first went on the air.
In terms of the beginning, no. Almanzo did not come into the series until season 6. And, Almanzo came into the show to be Laura's love interest. I mean, anybody who had read the Little House books, which were first published beginning in 1932, knew that Almanzo was the love of her life. And when that character was introduced, people who had been reading and loving those books for years knew what was coming. They understood it better than I did because I hadn't read the books yet. But he came in to be the person who would be the catalyst for Laura to go from pigtails to being a young woman.
Okay,
and that was my purpose.
So what was it like then coming into a show where, of course, the cast and crew had been working together for several years and probably had a shorthand with each other? What was it like being the new guy on the set?
It was nerve-wracking, and the nerves are generally all of the nerves were all of my creation, Peter. The people who were there, they were, like Michael, supremely confident about what they were doing. So I had the anxieties all by myself, not wanting to be the one who upset the apple cart and ruined this incredibly successful program. But Michael never would have let he was so good at what he was doing. He would never have let an actor blow themselves up in front of the camera. He assured me, not initially, but he assured me very soon that he would always, as with everybody in the cast, he would take care of everybody and make sure that everybody came off well. And I think he lived up to that promise, Peter.
Did that a little bit of trepidation, those butterflies, actually help you in playing a character that was also new to the scene?
Yeah, I think it probably did. I think everything that, it's funny. I think things work in ways that when you're the person doing it, you don't necessarily know. You don't know what you're bringing. You're just coming in to do the best job you can. I mean, people talk about all the time that 95% of the success of any filmed entertainment or stage entertainment, for that matter, is in the casting. If you can get the right person in the part, 95% of the issues are going to be taken care of in that. And so whatever I was bringing, my anxiety, my youth, my naivete, my innocence, whatever that was coming in the door, that comes in the door whether you're conscious of it or not, And so the audience saw who I was in that moment, and I think that really, really helped. And the challenge of working with a much younger actress, and Melissa Gilbert, that had to be handled. That had to be handled very carefully. They were never going to hire, someone who came off as some kind of lady killer. That was not. It was not It was a romantic part, but it was a fantasy romantic part more than a kind of a. I don't know. It was never going to be overt. It was always going to be underplayed and more sweetly done than overtly done. And I think that's what Michael hired. And based on the way I was raised and grew up, that's what I brought. And it was, it worked out really, really well.
Your book is called Prairie Man, My Little House Life and Beyond. What made you decide to write this book now?
I think, in the 50th year of the series, there is so much fan interest in people who loved the program are insatiably interested in all the stories that go with the program. We have had a number of women in our cast, most obviously, most significantly, Melissa, Allison Arngren, Karen Grassley, Charlotte Stewart write books. None of the men had written a book about their experience. Our producer, Kent McCrae, wrote a book about his television career, which was a wonderful read. And I just thought, in the 50th year, this was the right time to do this. And of course, you don't make that decision in the 50th year. You have to make that in the 50th year -2. So, back in 2022, it really got serious about creating an outline, submitting a manuscript. My friend Mary McDonough, who gained fame on the Waltons, walked my manuscript, or walked my outline, my proposal, into Kensington Book Publishers in New York and gave it to her editor. And he called me the next day and made an offer. And that just struck me as that was kismet. The fact that someone was instantly interested and knew they were interested and made, in my mind, a very generous offer to create a partnership to do this together. I was all in, and I started writing in January of 2023. I submitted my first draft at the end of July of 2023, and we have been buttoning it up and polishing it and doing all the things that you do. And now on June 25th, it will make its way into the public's hands. And I'm excited about it. I'm a little nervous about it, but I'm excited about it because it's been a fun process.
When you write a book like this, when you write a memoir, it gives you an opportunity to delve back into your own life and reflect on some of the things that have taken place. Now, in going through the process of that, were you surprised by how you felt in doing the book, or were you surprised in some of the emotions that were brought back up because you were reminiscing about some of the things that you probably didn't think about every day?
Yeah, I think so. And the way the process went, Peter, is, I had an outline. And the outline was very geared towards people who love the program, who have a bent towards entertainment of the 70s and 80s. It was targeted that way. As I think back on it, as I think back now, having the projects done, there are so many things that could have gone into the book that didn't go into the book, that were perhaps more of a personal nature. For a first time out in reflecting on it, I think we made a good choice to, and when I say we, I mean me and Kensington Publishers. I think we made a good choice as to the way we focused this. It should be a very, my hope is, Peter, that it's a comfortable read for people through a certain era. And I connect, everything pulls back to Little House in this. That Little House is the thread through which the entire story comes. I'm talking about things that precede Little House. I talk about things post Little House. But I think the reader will always feel like Little House is close at hand. And the reason for that is because Little House has been just such an enormously impactful thing in my life. I would never have imagined I would be talking about this 45 years after the fact. Well, it's just been amazing.
I was about to bring that up because just last month I had Allison Arngren on the program, and I asked her that very question, and that is, did you still think that you would be talking about Little House 50 years later, and that most importantly, the fans would also be talking about it 50 years later?
Yeah, I think it's remarkable. At the time we were doing it, I just couldn't conceive of that. But it was Michael Landon who said to me, at some point, and I'm sure he said it to lots of us. I think probably Allison recounted the story because she'd gotten it too. Michael's belief was that people would be watching this show long after we were all gone. At 25 years old, that just seemed inconceivable to me. Now, getting ready to turn 68 years old, it's totally conceivable to me, and I absolutely believe it. And as long as the show is kept up to date technologically in terms of whatever the delivery system of choice is, I think that the show can be present for a long, long time. And now, of course, because Little House is available in a totally digital form, it could go on. I mean, maybe the compressions change and all that, but it's digital. It can go on for a long, long time. So I'm a total believer that Little House will be around for many, many years, perhaps long after we're all gone.
One of the things you did, and you did other shows as well, you were a young actor, a young, handsome actor, and the downside of that is the same thing as starlets, and that is
Sure.
they're a dime a dozen. So what did you do consciously to say, I'm going to step out beyond that role and have a longevity in career that you don't get with the starlets or the hunks?
Yeah, I think, and Peter, I think that's a very good observation. I mean, I think that's a really interesting observation, and I think that's true. One's aesthetic, whatever that aesthetic is. I mean, look, if one's going to look at this as an overarching thing, I'm very grateful for the aesthetic that I have, and I owe it to my parents. There are pictures of my parents in the book. They were a beautiful couple when they were young, and my brother and sister and I are all brother, sister, and me are all beneficiaries of that genetic talent, if we want to call it that. But you're right. It has its limits, and I think what we all have to be willing to do, regardless of what we look like, is I think we have to be willing to follow our curiosities about the things that interest us. And if we have a desire to try something, we have to try it. And I would say that to anybody in any realm, no matter what their interests are, if you have a curiosity about something, follow it, because it can lead to good things. You can't live your life being, 23 to 28-year-old young man. It just doesn't happen. Now, I'm very blessed in a way, Peter, that because of that, at my age, this work was captured, and it goes on and on and on for people. But the sum total of our life, all of our lives, is much more than that. We all do many more things. I am grateful that I have this time capsule of work that is so beautiful and a part of something that is so beautiful and so loved. To be connected to that and embrace that. And I have embraced it. I have fully embraced it. I think when we first finished the show, I was thinking, well, I've got to be able to do something else now. I need to move away from this. But, it didn't take more, well, it took, another decade, a decade and a half. And you start realizing how omnipresent this work remains in people's lives, regardless of what else you're doing in your life. This work is there, and people are watching it every day, loving it every day, and appreciating it. And so I made the decision that I was going to, as Allison has, as so many of our cast has, we have stepped fully into that appreciation, and we have been blessed by it. Every day with this project, with this program, has been a gift. You can say, well, it's limited you in some ways? Sure, maybe it has, but the overarching good that's come from it is enormous. It's so much greater than any, disappointment or typecasting or whatever one can talk about with that. I'm so grateful to be associated with something that is so loved and appreciated on this very genuine level as Little House is. I just couldn't be prouder of it.
Well, I got to mention a couple of other things that you have been in. You were Moondoggy in the new Gidget.
Yes, I was. I went from manly to moondoggy. That was I love doing that. And it was this very light, fluffy half hour. It started as a pilot that was sort of a traditional rom-com. Gidget grows up married to Moondoggy, their little struggles that they have in this 2-hour movie. It was very traditional rom-com. When the show was purchased for a series, it was purchased as part of a first-run syndication wheel of programming that would premiere on a weeknight and rerun on Saturday mornings. And so immediately the producers realized, as producers are inclined to do, they are really tapping into who their audience is. The show had to get younger, a lot younger, and a lot sillier, in a sense. And I'm grateful that I went and spent, several months before we started shooting, taking classes at the Groundlings in Los Angeles, wonderful improvisational comedy company. And it just gets you loose and having sort of fun with yourself and trusting yourself a little bit more and laughing more. And it really helped stepping into that world where what we had done as a pilot was going to become less and less a part of what the series was going to be, which was really a live action cartoon show. And we, Karen Richmond and I, who was Gidget, the seventh Gidget, a lovely, lovely woman, one of my dear friends to this day, we just went with the flow of what was coming at us. You get these scripts and you read them, and all this work goes into preparing these scripts. Actors have to step in and you do what you're asked to do. And that's the contract, and that's the deal we make. Wasn't always, in all candor, Peter, I wasn't always thrilled with what the scripts were asking us to do, but ultimately the job is to step in and do what you're asked to do, and just do it the best you can in the time that you have to do the work. You just give your best self to it. And I think that's the job. That's all of our jobs. In any job we do is to step into it fully and give the best of ourselves, and the things take care of themselves after that. But it's just about being there and being committed to being there. You can't have 1 foot in and 1 foot out. You got to be all the way in.
Well, we're running out of time, so I don't get a chance to ask you about Hank in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but I do want to ask about the fact that you went to Broadway. And yes. I just want to know, was being a stage actor something that you started doing or something you did later? And if you did it later, was it daunting going to Broadway?
So like most young people who sort of have a curiosity about performance, that started for me in high school, and that's inevitably going to be on a stage doing things, and then going to college and doing things on a stage. I did not imagine that I would, I sort of hold that Broadway experience with a lot of reverence. The talent level that you are encountering in that world, the people that you have the opportunity to play with are just amazing, amazing talents. And the life force of a Broadway cast is incredible. That energy level is amazing. So I was really, really just blown away to get the chance. I went in and sang. I had just done an international production of West Side Story, another completely out of the blue situation, but I was hired to go to Japan and play Tony in West Side Story. And then, so I was singing really, really well by the time I finished that tour. So I went in and sang for Stephen Sondheim and James Lapine, Paul Gimignani, Joanna Merlin, who was the casting director of Into the Woods. I sang for them on an afternoon. Stephen sort of walked me through the process of what the audition, because I hadn't really done a lot of that kind of auditioning. He was great. Helped me through that process. They hired me 2 hours later. And I was, the next week or 2 weeks later, I was off to New York to start what turned out to be 320 performances of Into the Woods at the Martin Beck Theater on 45th Street. And, it was just amazing to step out onto that stage in that environment with that level of talent around you and have an opportunity to do what you're being asked to do. It was amazing, and yet, as with all things in the theater, once it's done, it's done. There's no, unless you happen to be in the PBS, in the PBS video of a Broadway show, and I don't even know if they're still doing that series, but we did that, and so there was a high quality video record of the show, which I'm not in, but there is a time capsule of the show. That's the huge difference, I think, which anybody who does both would tell you, is when you've stood in front of a camera, it's there forever. I mean, until, unless someone decides it's no longer watchable, but it has the possibility of being there forever. A production on a stage lives in people's memories after it's done, and it lives in my memory after it's done. I loved being there and being surrounded by those people and being a part of that community for a brief period of time. Just exceptionally talented people. I really loved it.
And many people can relive some of those memories with your book, Prairie Man, My Life, My Little House Life and Beyond. And I think the subtitle is the most important part, especially the word beyond, because people can learn about more of the things you did beyond Little House. So I thank you very, very much, Dean, for taking the time to be on the program with us. It was a pleasure and an honor to have a chance to talk to you.
Peter, you're delightful. Thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you.
Actor Dean Butler. His new book is called Prairie Man, My Little House Life and Beyond. You can go to my website at thestuffwile.com, check out the show number for this program, which is show number 0773, and you'll find links to Dean's site, plus links to either Amazon.com or Amazon.ca, where you can order his book directly.
You've just heard an exclusive excerpt from the Stuph File Program with Peter Anthony Holder. To hear any or all of the full hour-long shows, visit thestufffile.com. Stuph is spelled S-T-U-P-H. That's thestufffile.com. A presentation of Flying Fish Communications.